Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another podcast episode. It's your host Shabir Hassan. Really glad to be back again today because today's episode is going to be really special. Why? Because we have another, the amount of guests that we have from America and overseas is crazy right now. So that's one thing, but the guest that we have today, more specifically, is someone that I've known for some time now. Again, it's through social media, but it's more through the creative scene. Brother that I've really, mashallah, got to know in the last couple of months a lot more, alhamdulillah. And someone who's also recently, as a spoken word artist and as a creative, he's also recently, in the last few months, released an album, his first ever album, which is known as 1212, which we're going to speak about, which we're going to speak more about, inshallah, shortly. But it gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest for today, our dear brother Essam Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How you doing, bro? You good?
Alhamdulillah, everything is good.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you for joining us
No,
on
thank
the
you for
on the
having
podcast,
me.
bro. It's good to have you here. Obviously, you've been to the UK a few times now. It's becoming like your second home.
Third home.
Third home, okay. What's the second home?
I don't know. I just wanted to say third home. So I'm joking. I think yeah, UK is like my second home, man. To be honest.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah, it's good to have you here. Obviously, we spent a lot of time together during the tour a few months back, which was good, and now you're back again for a few more events. So you're coming from South Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
South Seattle. Tell us about South Seattle.
Yeah.
Whereabouts is that in America? What's it like there?
So it's on the west coast of the United States,
Okay.
and more specifically on the northwest.
Yeah.
So we're like at the corner of the United States, the top left, if you're looking at the map.
Okay, cool.
And it's in Washington, the state of Washington. There's Washington D.C., which is on the East Coast, and then there's the
So
state.
it's got nothing to do with
different.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah, so it's another Washington next to Portland in California, and I'm in the city of Seattle, and specifically, South Seattle is the community I grew up in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. The coming to your album, because there's one thing that I mentioned. You released your first album not too long ago, actually, and alhamdulillah, response was really good from what I've seen from an outside perspective. Obviously, you can shed more light on that. I enjoy it myself, listening to the album even until now. It's an a cappella album which has different messages.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when Ilyas Mao was here as well. I believe that was episode number 2. Discussions that we had regarding creativity, especially in the Muslim scene, which we'll speak about later on in more detail, is mainly about the fact that a nasheed or a spoken word piece, just because it's being done by a Muslim, is not necessarily going to have an in-your-face Muslim topic. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't necessarily have to have the word Allah in it and, talking about the Prophet ﷺ, etc., etc. But it's more like faith-inspired. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I got the same vibe from your album, which is that it's very much faith-inspired. Yeah, it's an a cappella album. Yeah, it has positive messages, but it's very much faith-inspired. So one key message that you spoke about, even the name, by the way, which I didn't know until I asked you, 1212, right? So maybe you can talk about that as well, because a lot of people don't know why you call your album 1212.
Yeah.
And a lot of the content, obviously you have a track called Ummi
Yeah.
in the album, which means in Arabic, my mother, or it's
Yeah.
a title for your mother. But it's not just that one piece. It's like many of your, quite a number of your pieces, you mention your mother quite a lot. So let's start with that. Since it's the centerpiece of your album, we should, of course, start with that. Why, obviously, like, we all love our mothers, but why did you feel like that was important for your album, which is like a creative side of your life? It's like, for outsiders, you're mixing the two. You're bringing the personal family side.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about that.
For me, my mother is the reason that I decided to make some changes in my life, and the reason that I had to, mature at a young age. And even like as a young kid, people used to be like, "Yo, you got an old soul," Even though I was, I was still jokester and whatever,
Yeah.
I was still myself. Like the way I approached life was a bit differently, despite the like temptations that I was surrounded by in my community and the lifestyle that I was introduced to, like growing up in my community, right?
Mm.
So I've been through so much with my mother. I seen her go through so much, right? In 1994, when I was 1 year old, because I was
Mm.
born in 1993. Like my biological father, he wasn't there when I was born, and he left, and so I was pretty much born an orphan, right, in
Mm.
Islam, and when I was when I was almost 1 year old, my mom decided to go look for my father. And when my mother met my father in Italy, that was the country that they met for the first time.
Mm.
She left because all the name calling, oh, a single mother, did
Yeah,
she even get married? This that, right?
so even back then there was this stigma attached. It's not like
Yeah,
it's not because obviously nowadays we still see the same thing.
yeah.
So
So
even back
it
then, yeah.
was that was the reason, and my mom, she just got fed up with that. This was in
Mm.
Morocco, and she went to go look for him. He showed no interest. We went through some experiences, when I was a baby with my mom,
Mm.
where there was like kind of like life and death situation where I was getting sick, and we was like in an abandoned house for like 3 months, like surviving off of like canned food and fruits off of the tree and stuff like that, right?
So
And
was it literally like you're homeless at this stage?
yeah, yeah. So yeah, from there, fast forward into, my mom ran into a couple like community
Mm.
members, non-Muslim. They're actually nuns,
Yeah.
and she told them the situation, and they helped her come to Seattle, where her sister was living. She got to Seattle, and after some time, um, we ended up in a single mother homeless shelter,
Mm.
and fast forward into when my mom met my father who raised me, my stepfather, but I look at him like my real father because he
Yeah.
was my father figure, and I usually stay away from the term stepfather, but just to give context,
Yeah.
I grew up in a neighborhood that that was pretty much low income neighborhood. Housing projects, Section 8. And so I was exposed to certain type of culture growing up in my community, and uh, fast forward into I'm just in a nutshell. Fast forward
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
2007. All right, so this is where like the story like really starts. Like my life was, alhamdulillah, my life was good. I had a happy childhood. I had everything I needed. My parents gave me everything I needed. Obviously, what I'm saying, there's like certain things that we're accustomed to,
Mm.
having, coming from like a low income background, right? And there's certain things that we're exposed to. But, for the most part, as children, we don't really pay attention to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
struggle, really, we're just enjoying our childhood,
Mm.
right? But I think at the age of 13 is where my life like really changed, like before that, like before the age of 13, like I was exposed to like like drug culture, gang culture, and stuff like that. But it was not really a big deal. It was just part of my life, right? Um, but I remember 2013, stuff like 2007. My mother, she was given medicine she was allergic to, and she went into a coma. Right, and this is when I was graduating from middle school and I was transitioning into high school. So I was about turning
Mm.
14 years old, and my mom went into a coma because the doctor gave her medicine she was allergic to, even though it was written in the records, right?
Mm.
And that she was that of her allergies. So I remember like I'll be like sitting in the hospital every night, just like watching the tube going down her throat, like keeping her alive. And I think that time of my life was traumatizing. And on top of that, like transitioning to high school, right?
Mm.
It's like a whole, everybody's older now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like a whole different culture, right? The teenage years, and I had my friends around me were joining gangs, and there was a lot of things that I was exposed to at that age. And it would be to the point where I would be in the middle of class, and I would feel these like the sharpness in my chest, like this chest pain, and
Mm.
I would struggle to breathe, and I didn't know what that was. So I would rush to the nurse's office, and I would explain to the nurse, yo, this is going on, and the nurse
Mm.
would just tell me like, put your feet on the ground, inhale, exhale, just tell me to focus on my
Mm.
breathing, right? Like years later, that's when I started to like realize that was linked to like anxiety. I was having
Yeah.
anxiety
Yeah.
attacks, because of what I was witnessing my mom
Mm.
go through, and yeah, alhamdulillah, my mom made it out the situation she was in, even though the doctor said she was not gonna make it. I remember that was the first time like I was not praying like the five
Yeah, yeah.
prayers and stuff. Yeah, I didn't I wasn't I wasn't uh I didn't have an understanding of the religion like that at that point
Mm.
of my life. But I remember I used to because my parents did teach me the importance of prayer and stuff, right? Because of the society I grew up in, like Islam was not really a big deal in my life.
Yeah, yeah.
But I remember I used to put my hands up and I used to just like pray to God, like help my mom get out of the situation, you know. Alhamdulillah, my mom got out of the situation,
Alhamdulillah.
and I went through a few phases in my life where even after she got out of the hospital, where I became a victim of or a product of my environment, and I turned to I don't know if I want to get into details, man, but I turned to like a certain lifestyle that really hurt my mom even more.
Mm.
I remember one day I came home, and this is a regular day. I came home from school, and I had my backpack. I walked into my room. I took off my backpack, and I walked to the hallway, and I seen one of my neighbors who was helping my mom at that time, and then she was like, "Essam, come here," and I walked to the room, and I see my mom laying flat on the floor, and I was like, "What's going on?" I ran to her, and I said, "Mom, you good? Like, what's going on?" And then she just started screaming, like, and I never heard her scream like that before. And I remember I was like, "Yo, call the ambulance, call 911." They called the ambulance. I sat her up. I gave her a breathing machine, and she was just screaming. And I remember at this point, I was just like, I was having a nervous breakdown. Like, if you see me that day, I don't like at that time, like I like you be like, you know what I mean. I wouldn't show emotion and stuff, right?
Mm.
I was trying to be tough and
Yeah,
hold
yeah.
everything, right? But like, well, in this moment right here, I didn't care who was around me. I just broke down. And I remember, I remember it got to the point where I situated my mom waiting for the ambulance. Like 5 minutes felt like a whole hour, man. And I remember I was pacing back and forth. And I was literally like, I raised my hands up and I was like God, if you take my mom out of this situation, if you make sure she's straight, I promise I'm gonna change. Like, I'm not gonna I'm gonna quit everything that I'm doing, and I'm gonna change my life around for the
Mm.
better. And I remember and I went back to my mom when the ambulance came, and I was just telling her to repeat the shahada over and over again. I thought that was it.
Mm.
And she went in the ambulance. I went with her in the ambulance, and for that whole year, I spent like time just helping her, and just being around her, right? And that kind of strengthened the relationship. So yeah, man, and that's from yeah, bro. That's just like a few situations when my mom that made me just realize that I gotta get my life together and make sure she's happy with the life I'm living.
SubhanAllah. So
Yeah.
literally, so what you're saying is from that point onwards, pretty much that was it. Like did you manage to quit everything there and then? Did you manage
Yeah,
to escape that lifestyle?
yeah, I did. I did. I remember I kept my word
Yeah.
to God. I kept my word to God, and I changed. Like I started being a better person. Um, and I cut off a lot of habits in my life.
Mm.
But at the same time, though, like we gotta understand, like even the word al-ins, the human, what word does it derive from?
Forgetfulness.
The one who forgets,
Mm.
right? That's like the usl of our, like the nature of our creation,
Mm.
So like I'm not, I didn't like fully change
Yeah,
perfectly
yeah.
forever, right? But I had my ups and downs, right,
Mm.
throughout the years. I was still young at the time, and so I did slip up, again. But it's kind of like a car. Like you
Yeah.
gotta, when you're trying to get a car out of a pothole, when it's
Yeah,
stuck in a
yeah.
pothole, it's like you move forward and it rolls back. You move forward again, it rolls back, and then you finally get the car out of that pothole,
Mm.
right? And then yes, I'm finally out. I could drive again, and then you're driving, and then down the road you're probably gonna come across another pothole,
Yeah.
right? But there's two types of people, right? There's the one who does something wrong, and they're just like whatever, right? Like how I was when I was younger, I was just like whatever. I didn't care. And then there's the one who does something wrong, and feels guilty about it, and prays for forgiveness and makes the attempt to change, right?
Mm.
So I think it's just this realizing that we're going to make mistakes again. We're going to slip up again. We're gonna run into another pothole, but attempting to get out of that pothole again, or you just stay in that pothole and just not go anywhere. So, but that was like all of these, it prepared me for the next time I needed to change again, right? Because I don't want to create this false idea that, I changed one time and I'm perfect now. You know what I mean? Because I slip up. You know what I mean? I'm not. If my sins haven't had an odor, you would not want to come near me. You know what I mean?
And as in, so the Islam that we see now, yeah, compared to the Islam back then, obviously now you're taking your creative side a lot more seriously. That's why, alhamdulillah, like, it's by you taking your creative side seriously, what that's now led to more opportunities for you. Like you're traveling, like you're in Australia. You're going to Australia again soon. You've been around to different countries, different cities across the world because of this. And then obviously you released your album. And then, like I said, coming back to the original question, which is in your album, you incorporated a lot of your life experiences. You spoke about it like quite openly. And then you mentioned your mother a lot, again, coming even to the name of the album. So what effect did that have on your creative side? Like, where's the crossover here? Where's the link?
Yeah. If it wasn't for my mom, then I wouldn't. Given that, like, I grew up in an environment where majority of the people are not connected to the religion, and I'm not saying this in a judgmental way, but it's just the culture that we grew up in. Like, being a practicing Muslim is a rare thing. But because of what I seen my mom go through, it made me make steps in my life where, damn, like, I gotta make sure I'm straight.
Yeah.
So with my mother, like, she's the source of my inspiration. And if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be on this path, trying to spread positivity and out here traveling and sharing my story and connecting with the youth and letting them know of positive ways that they could deal with their trauma and their pain, because everybody has a unique experience. Everybody experiences something, unique that only they can understand. Like, I wouldn't be able to walk a mile in your shoes, and the same for you. You wouldn't be able to walk a mile in my shoes, right? Because Allah only burdens the soul. Allah doesn't burden the soul more than it could bear. You know what I mean? So we all have our own unique experiences. So that's how the album came about. Like, my first inspiration, like I remember the first piece I dropped. Like, one of my lines was like, "My mama, she barely could breathe, and I say the West is my home." I'm speaking about, like, my mother literally barely, like, she barely, like, she can't, my mom literally struggles to breathe. That line was literal. It wasn't a metaphor. You know what I'm saying? And it can be a metaphor too, but like, that's what it is. It's like, in my mind, I'm like I gotta make sure I'm present with her, and I appreciate every moment with her, and I gotta make sure that she's happy with the way I'm living, right? Because, like, my mom sacrificed so much for me to be here, and if I'm out here just messing around and kicking it with you know what I'm saying, just running around in the streets and acting reckless, and you know what I mean, not listening to my mom, then like what's the point of what I'm doing? It's like, even if I gotta sacrifice something I love for the sake of you know what I'm saying, like, my mom, then I'm gonna do that, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, even though it's something I don't want to do, I'm gonna still do that regardless, right? So that's, I mean, if that answers the question.
Yeah. It's crazy because, I mean, like you said, like, your story, your journey is completely different to mine, and any other person listening or watching. Like, what you experienced with your mother, like, I could never imagine me experiencing the same thing with my own mother. Like, I don't know how I would handle it. Like, as much as I would tell myself now, I'd be patient and I'd do X, Y, Z. But when you're there,
that's a good point, man.
And literally, when you experience and you witness what you saw, like your mother going through that, as in, it's a powerful message to a lot of people listening and watching, that due to their own experiences in life, maybe they don't have a connection with their mother the way that you do, the way that I might do.
Yeah, and that's important too, man. Because, like, I remember you in, like, one of my lines, I said, a doctor could study an illness but never know what the patient is feeling. The patient represents the one who experiences. All right, the patient represents the things we experience on a day-to-day basis, and the doctor is the one who studies those experiences. So
From an
from
outsider's
the outsider
perspective,
looking in, right? So I could give you advice and be like, brother, verily through hardship comes ease.
yeah,
Just stay strong. I know what you're going through. You know what I mean? We're promised that. But it's easier said than done.
yeah, of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for somebody who actually experiences that experience, that patient, they're the one who knows, you know what I'm saying? Like we
Yeah.
could just be insensitive and just be like yeah, the attack in Christchurch, for example, all of the Muslims are going straight to Jannah. You know what I mean? So don't worry, don't mourn. But the people that are experiencing it, they're still gonna feel those emotions, and they're gonna still grieve, and they're gonna still mourn. You know what I mean? It might put some peace in the heart. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
But at
yeah.
the same time, it's like I think sometimes we're insensitive about other people's experiences.
I think on that point, because it comes back to what you were saying before as well. Like growing up, you didn't want to show your emotions to people, and obviously, like one of the reasons for that is just the society we live in. Yeah, especially as a man. Like, boys don't cry. That's what they say, right?
Yeah.
Boys don't cry. Well, grown men don't cry. But clearly that had an effect on you, right? Like the fact that like experience what you were experiencing. Then obviously comparing it to, I had my own experience growing up. People have their own experiences. But then you feel like you can't let those emotions show. So did you feel like that had a worse of an impact on you?
Yeah.
By doing that?
Yeah. So I remember the first time I wrote a piece. It was about my father experience, and I remember I pulled my friend to the side and I shared with him the piece, and his reaction was like, "Whoa, I didn't," what I'm saying, like, that's crazy, Like, I thought you were my bro. I thought I would know everything about you.
Yeah.
But I remember at that time, it felt like the weight of the world was lifted off my chest, because I wasn't able to speak to him about it, but I was able to share with him a piece that I wrote about the situation,
Yeah, yeah.
And from that point on, I realized the importance of sharing your emotions. But in a society that makes it seem like you're weak, you're soft, or you're square if you share your emotions. Like I was one of those kids that I didn't talk about what I was going. Nobody knew what I was going through in my life. I was going through a lot, and a lot of people are going through a lot, not just me, And a lot of people don't talk about the emotions, but what happens is like just like you're filling up in air in a balloon. You keep on filling those blowing that balloon. Eventually, it's gonna pop, right? So that's what happened to me. That's why we snap sometimes, and that's why because I went through that experience. I understand, like, I'm not gonna judge the next man, like, when they're doing something wrong, because I understand, you know what I'm saying, like the reason that they're doing what they're doing, right? And you're able to empathize, you know what I'm saying, rather than just straight up judge and be like, astaghfirullah, brother, what are you doing? Like, we don't know how that person ended up where they're at, you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't know what they've been through, you know what I mean? So we can't be quick to judge individuals.
I'm going to ask a bit of a personal question.
Go ahead.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I remember last year I put up an Instagram post.
Yeah.
And it was really random on my part.
I don't know what you're going to ask. I'm just smiling. It's a random question.
Yeah, it's fine.
So I'm just drinking water.
Yeah, cool, go for it. So I put up a post, and I basically asked people, my followers, name the chapter that you're on currently in your life.
Damn, you remember that still?
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah.
I remember what I said
Yeah.
too.
So I said, name the chapter. It's really random.
That's how you know I was a fan for a long time.
Name the chapter that you're currently on in your life. So I think my one at that stage was like, I can't remember what I put down myself. It's like growth or something like that, yeah. And people were putting like, it was really interesting to see the kind of stage that different people were. Because I said put your age there as well if you're comfortable with it. So people were like, I'm 20. I'm lost. Like the chapter is called Lost. I don't know what to do in life. And a lot of people that were that same age put similar comments. And the people who are like 25, they're like on a different part of the journey, but a bit more, like they had progressed in their journey, etc. And then your one stood out because it was different to the rest. Because you put the chapter of your title is forgiveness.
I was 24, right?
And you were 24 years old.
Yeah.
Right. That was different. Yeah. No one else had put that. A lot of people obviously won't know the backdrop to the story. Why would you put forgiveness for? And look, it's like that was last year.
Yeah.
So you're in a different chapter now. Let's just say, for example, yeah.
Yeah.
So exactly, I'm on a different chapter right now compared to when I put that post up. But let's just go back there.
Yeah.
That moment in your life.
Okay.
Why did you put forgiveness?
So at that time, I remember. I think that was right after when you put that up. Um, that was right after I met my father for the first time in my life. After never seeing a single picture of him, after not having a single conversation with him, I met my biological father for the first time. And I remember before I met him, I told him, I remember I told myself, I forgive him. You know what I'm saying? Like, whatever he did, it's whatever. I'm just go visit him. And I went to visit him. And, I flew overseas to go visit him. And I remember when I encountered him for the first time, he didn't even know I was coming. I got linked up through my first cousin. And I remember he walked into the door.
He didn't know you were coming.
Mm-mm.
Oh, wow.
He didn't know I was
Okay.
coming. I walked in through the door, or he walked in through through the door. I was with my cousin, and one of my bros, and the first thing he did was just give me a hug, and I was just like, "What is this guy doing? Why is he hugging me?"
Yeah.
And we sat down,
So
and we
did you,
had a
did you know who you
conversation.
were? Like
He knew who I was straight away,
straight away.
And we sat down, we had a conversation, and eventually, the conversation it led to an argument, and I snapped.
Yeah.
I remember my cousin tried to mention he tried to bring up my mom and blame my mom. Why she leave after all these? Why she leave for so long? Like it's her fault, So he said something along those lines.
Yeah, yeah.
And keep in mind, I barely speak Arabic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So I remember, I remember I blacked out, and I just started like naming points. Saying, did this not happen? Did this not happen? Did this not?
Yeah.
And he was agreeing with everything I was saying. And then I remember I was just angry, And then from that day, I was just cold towards him. Even though before going to him, I said I forgave him. That day I was just cold towards him. Like he would try to, you know what I'm saying, connect with me, be my friend or whatever, and I would just be cold towards him. But like I didn't want to show that side that my mom taught me. That loving and the affection that my mom taught me. From the yeah. So I don't want to show him any of that. So I was just trying to like I was just like I'd even smirk around him type of thing.
Yeah.
I was just straight cold towards him, and I was reflecting. I was like, I want to show him love, but I can't. I don't know why. Right, and obviously we always hear about it's good to forgive and forget this, that, Islam talks about it, whatever. But and somebody could tell me that about a father experience, somebody who grew up with their father, they could tell me that, but experiencing it was different. And I remember I was trying to, but I couldn't. It was weird, like I just couldn't. And I remember I had a conversation with one of my bro, Yusuf Krom. I was chopping it up with him out there in Egypt. And he broke down something to me. He was talking about how like there's 3 types of forgivenesses according to Islam. And the first type of forgiveness was forgiven, and the way he broke it down was according to actual stories. I can't.
Yeah.
I don't want to say the wrong stories, right? But the idea was forgiving, but having every right to return the emotions of your suffering. I forgive you, but eye for an eye. I'm gonna get revenge.
Yeah.
Like you punch me in the arm, I'm gonna punch you in the arm too, with the equivalent amount of strength, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's what I found myself doing upon meeting my father. It's like my revenge was kind of like just being cold towards him. Yeah, but I mean it was understandable.
Yeah,
you know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Like dude left. You know what I'm saying? He put us through some things, and I was just, you know what I mean? Like I just couldn't show him love, whatever. I was just cold towards him, and there was a few experiences that I've at that time. I remember, for example, we'll be walking in the streets, and every single person that we would walk by, like for example, if we were looking for something, asking for directions, he would walk to them. He would be like, hello, Hada Ibni, like he'll be like, this is my son, I'm with my son, and then he'll ask the question. I'm like, and my mom like, why is he mentioning that? I'm like that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
But when I started to reflect on it, like he was just excited to be with me.
Yeah.
And it made me kind of like have a soft spot for him in my heart. And then I was like, man. And then I remember he took me to his house when my grandparents, they passed away, from his parents, pretty much their house. And I remember I opened the closet, like he showed me my room. I opened the closet, and I seen like um, like little toys,
Yeah.
like you know the fluffy toys. I don't know what you call it.
Yeah.
Stuffing animals, stuffing animal,
Stuffed animals as well.
stuff that's it, stuffing animal. Stuff, you know, I'll see, you know, those things. I'll see like so many backpacks and so many, you know, different shirts and clothes. And I was like, and I found out that those were things that he bought to have the feeling that he was buying something for his son, you know.
Oh wow.
And when I heard that, and it just made me just like, whoa, you know. I just kind of, you know, I was just. It made me just kind of emotional, and even things that like he would wash my clothes and iron it. Nobody ever did that for me. I did everything by myself my whole life. You know what I'm saying? Because of my mom's illness, I had to learn how to do those things on my own. But and it made me feel like a child again, type of thing, you know. And then I learned the second type of forgiveness was forgiving, but questioning, like to have a peace of mind. Like I forgive you, but you're questioning the person so you can have a peace of mind, right? And through asking him questions and having a conversation with him, I learned that the reason why he did what he did because he was suffering from mental health, and he attempted suicide, you know, multiple times. Even the time where we're in a life and death situation when I was younger, he attempted suicide, right? He felt like he couldn't care for us, right? And um, that made me become more understanding of his situation and realize how can I blame like a man who suffers from mental health. My whole life I was just concerned about my emotions and my mother's emotions and what he put us through, but not once did it cross my mind, what if he's going through something as well? And that led me to learn the third type of forgiveness was forgiving, and this is the one that's the most beloved. Forgiveness with pure mercy, pure rahmah. I forgive you, but I'm not going to question why you did what you did to me, and I'm not going to get any type of revenge. I just forgive you purely for the sake of God. And when I heard about that, I was like, man, I gotta implement that, you know. And I attempted to, right, and I couldn't do it on the first trip. I went to later on. I found out he had cancer, so that made me just like, you know, I was like, okay, now I got to make sure I'm with him, the rest of his life, you know. So I went to visit him in Italy, right? That's where he lives, and he lived for the past 30 years. I went to go visit him, and our relationship got a little bit better, you know.
Yeah.
I was able to, you know, smile a little bit, and it got better, but still wasn't there yet. It was like a journey. It's like forgiveness it's like a journey. You can't just say I forgive you. If you could do that, mashallah, you know what I mean. But you know, like for me, it took practicing. It's like I'm conditioned to hate a man my whole life. My whole life, I hate this dude. I never want to. If I see him, I'm going to fight him, type of thing, right? So I'm conditioned this way. So in order for me to learn how to forgive, I had to train myself to forgive him, and I'm still on that journey. Even right now, before I could just be like, yeah, I forgive him now because I learned about that. But I'm learning that I'm still learning, right? And I went to visit him for a third time, a few months ago, right? And you know, inshallah, it's getting better, right? But yeah, man.
That's your journey of forgiveness. It's amazing because there was like you said, there was so many layers to that. Well, a lot of people, they would just think forgiveness is straightforward. It's forgiveness,
yeah, but
right?
It's not, bro.
But it's not because it's relative to each person. It depends what you've experienced. But it's an amazing kind of impactful story.
And just real quick, like, and there's this idea that we grew up on is I forgive, but I don't forget, right? But true forgiveness is forgiving and forgetting.
You
know what I mean? I just want to mention that.
You know, it kind of reminds me of a story, like going back to the seerah, like the life of the Prophet ﷺ, where in his life, you had quite possibly, well, not possibly, everyone agrees, the best man after the Prophets is Abu Bakr. And like, you would think that a man like Abu Bakr would never make any mistake. You know, he wouldn't make mistakes because that's how high he is in terms of status. But the thing is, what really got to Abu Bakr once is when his daughter, Aisha, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, where she was accused of doing something, and not just something, like the worst kind of action, right? And Abu Bakr, he found out that one of his relatives was part of the circle of people that was circulating this. And this guy is a Muslim, Mistah radiallahu anh, he's a companion of the Prophet ﷺ, and he's his relative. And not only is he his relative, but Abu Bakr used to financially fund him because he was a poor companion. So Abu Bakr from his own wealth would help him. And then imagine you find out that not only are people in your city talking about your daughter, saying something about her and accusing her of something, but the same guy who's your blood and you're funding, like you're actually doing him a favor and you're helping him, like he's part of it and he's accused you. So you can imagine, like, this is kind of actually really good because it's covering everything we've just discussed.
Yeah.
Like imagine the emotional side of thing. Abu Bakr didn't just keep it in himself. Like he was angry.
Yeah.
He's allowed to feel that emotion, isn't he? He's allowed to feel angry.
Yeah.
So he showed that clearly. And one thing that he said is that he spoke to this companion after the whole issue was cleared, and Allah revealed verses clearing Aisha's name. Literally, even after everything was cleared, Abu Bakr said to this companion, "I don't forgive you. I'm never going to forget what you did."
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, he said, that money I was giving you, khalas, is finished.
Yeah.
I'm no longer financially aiding you and funding you anymore. Finished. My relationship with you is over.
Wow.
Right? This is Abu Bakr.
Yeah.
So when we hear that side of him, we're like, well, I thought Abu Bakr was a soft, he's like the, but this is a human being, isn't it? End of the day, like your daughter, this is your daughter, is your blood, and someone said something bad. But then Allah reveals a verse. Allah reveals a verse after this. And this is directly actually towards Abu Bakr, but obviously in extension to all of us. That he's basically, in this verse, he's saying that you have, we understand why you're not forgiving him. But in true essence, أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ, like, would you not want Allah to forgive you? If you did something bad, which we're all going to do you not want Allah to forgive you? When this verse came, when he heard that verse, he realized, if I don't forgive this guy today, then tomorrow when I'm in the same position, I slip up, I make a mistake, and I expect Allah, the one whose forgiveness counts, and matters. If Allah doesn't forgive me, then, like, what am I going to do then? Because Allah can just say, well, you don't have enough mercy in your heart to forgive other people. My creation, my servants, why would I forgive you for?
Yeah.
So the moment this verse was revealed, Abu Bakr said, like, wallahi, like, by God, I want to be forgiven.
Yeah.
So what did he do? He forgave his companion. Even though he was hurt so much by him, he forgave him, and not only that, but he carried on funding him.
Takes a lot, man.
It takes a real man, a real woman,
Yeah.
to turn around after all of that and carry on.
So,
But the point of the story is, obviously, one is forgiveness, which was the final outcome. But the second thing is, what we're trying to say, I guess, in essence, is that it's okay to feel those emotions as well.
Yeah.
Like he felt angry,
yeah.
and he clearly displayed that anger in front of his relative, and he took action. Like he stopped doing something. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is Abu Bakr. So for all of us, I guess, so many of us, we're going to go through situations where even our own blood, they anger us. Just look at the story of like Joseph, his own brothers, they wanted to kill him
Yeah.
because they were jealous of him. Like his own brothers took him and threw him into a well. That's his blood. So sometimes even our own blood are going to like let us down, human beings. And we're allowed to feel. We're not saying you're not allowed to feel anger, isn't it? I think that's one of the main things that kind of we're speaking about. So it's interesting, like your journey, because the reason why another reason why I'm mentioning all of this is because I'm trying to get people to realize, only because I'm in the creative scene myself, so I understand this. So a lot of people listening, watching, or they might have heard they might have heard your album, they might have watched your video on YouTube, but they don't realize that there's a whole story behind what you just said. Those 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes, that those sounds that came together, and those lyrics aren't just like you woke up one day and you're like, yeah, I want to talk about my mum. There was a whole story behind it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah. It comes with a lot.
Yeah.
Man.
There's a lot behind it.
Yeah.
So now that people have heard, like, this is not even your whole story. It's like a glimpse of your story about your parents. Like, people don't understand when they listen back to, like anyone, by the way, who's listening, right, that has heard Essam's album, I want you to listen to it again, keeping everything that he just said in mind. And the things are going to, like, connect. A lot of things make sense.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. Like, this whole creativity side of things is amazing,
Yeah,
which a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know. It's amazing. One other thing that you speak about in your album a lot is moving away from from like your mother and father, etc. Like So Many Souls, for example, gun crime. You
Yeah.
speak about this a lot because it seems to be quite prevalent in from where you're from in
Mhm.
Seattle. I mean, in London we have
Knife crime.
obviously, yeah, we have the knife crime epidemic. So it's not guns because obviously you're not allowed to have guns here, so it's very rare
Yeah.
to come across that. But knife crime is a huge issue, especially in like the south side of London. It's like a growing trend, and
Mhm.
like every day you hear of people dying. So I want you to just kind of speak about that, like because you actually like, there's people that you know, right,
Mhm.
that have actually been victim to this.
Yeah.
Um, like what is that like? Like imagine an innocent guy who's young and he's got his whole life ahead of him or her, um, and getting involved in something as nasty as this. And obviously, there's different reasons why people would.
Mhm.
That's a whole like another discussion. But then like that's it. Their life comes to an end because of getting involved in such things. Like I want you to just kind of talk about your experiences in Seattle, and then like this kind of stuff that you speak about in your album as well.
Man, that ties into to another idea, man, of creatives
Mm.
and individuals with platforms utilizing their platform for the community,
Mm.
because like situations like this happen all the time, and it hurts to get a phone call, or to read a message, saying that like a friend of yours, even a close friend of yours that you grew up with, you know, they were murdered by another individual, or a drive-by shooting, or
Mm.
caught in the crossfire, whatever the case may be. I mean, it's as simple as that. Not as simple, but in terms of like these situations happen, and loved ones are affected by it. We hurt, we mourn, but what can we do about it to prevent? Because just before I left, another youngin was shot in my community, and these situations happen all the time. This Muslims killing Muslims, and
Mm.
Muslims stabbing Muslims in this case, in this community, right? Like these situations are happening, but like we got the community and leaders pointing fingers at the youth. But look at what the youth is doing, this, that. But in reality, bro, it's like it's up to us with platforms
Mm.
to what can we do for our community. You know what I mean? So it's and we see that like we see that like like some of, you know what I mean, like you anyone with a platform, a lot of the times, individuals with platforms and resources, everybody's out here just trying to secure their own position and make sure
Mm.
that they're in a comfortable position before they help anyone else. But if God gives you a mountain, you're gonna want another mountain. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Right? So we're never gonna be content, right? So for me, like with the work I'm doing is bigger than just quote unquote entertainment that the Muslim community want to call us entertainers, right? It's more so trying to reach out to my community, like through my art in the language that the youth speaks.
Mm.
I'm rapping. I'm a rapper. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying, right?
Mm.
And Muslims are uncomfortable with that word, but little do they know that rap means rhythm and poetry.
Yeah.
You know, in the language in the language I know.
Yeah.
So I'm not imitating rappers
Mm.
or the music industry, because this is the language I grew up on,
Mm.
right? And the prophet even spoke in the language of the people, right?
Mm.
So in the language I know, I'm speaking to my community, right? And in that track specifically, So Many Souls, I'm telling my community to like literally just I say well, plotting on a way to make it out. The way it's looking like instilling doubt. Life is different on my side of town. Don't nobody talk, but the pain is loud. It ain't a word of mouth you won't hear, but sound. The cycle never ends up in Seattle South. Ain't nobody posting in the summer now. Every season feeling like the winter time. It's been a minute since my city shined, cause so many mothers had to lose a son. Don't be a puppet to the system, family. Throw up the one and put down your gun. And I say, do you know how it would feel to hear that your brother got killed? What would you do? Would you go cop you a tool? Would you go buy you a weapon? Ride around acting the fool, or would you pull up? Or would you pull up to his mom's house, seeing if everything is cool? Would you turn up on the opposition, who happens to be on your own brother, or would you go straight to the mosque and pray for your bro in salat? Right. So it's me talking to my community. It's just like, yo, like you out here claiming that you love your brother, and you about to seek revenge, and you about to get revenge for your brother, but you can't simply do something as going to their mom's house and checking if everything is good and just simply visiting them. But you're claiming, oh, that was my brother, R.I.P. this person, R.I.P. that person. But you can't simply go to their mother's house to pay respect. You know what I mean? You can't, you know what I'm saying, do charity on behalf of your brother, or that's going to benefit him in the next life. Or you can't raise your hands up and pray for your brother.
Yeah.
You're just tweeting about it and talking about how you're going to seek revenge, right? So that's the issue I'm calling about, right? And yeah, man.
I mean, one of the most important things that you mentioned is for anyone, whether it's like an individual, creative, someone with influence, even like an organization, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
for them, for that individual or for those group of people to actually utilize the skill that they have or whatever it is, or the following that they have, the
Platform that
influence,
they
the
have,
platform,
yeah.
etc., to do something more than just, you know,
Yeah,
for there
man.
to be more of like a substance and to do something for the community. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, we don't got that, man. We don't got that, man. Like, everybody out here is selfish, you know what I'm saying? Including myself, all of us. You know, I'm not pointing fingers at no one, all of us. Like, we got to do better. You know what I'm saying? Like, even for example, like there was a rapper from the West Coast, Nipsey Hussle. Like he you know, he was a Muslim, but the amount of people he touched and the amount of Muslims he touched, because he was an independent artist, and he didn't have as big of a platform as like mainstream artists and stuff in the music industry, other artists, you know, but he was an independent artist. But the amount of work that he did for the community, like providing like IT resources for the community, giving back to the community, and the amount of people he impacted from his work. Artists in like my city, Seattle, like for example, the biggest artist in Macklemore, like, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm just mentioning these names to give an idea of like the mainstream industry.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like you know, if somebody who doesn't have a huge platform like that can do so much for a community and impact so many people, you know, around the world, and somebody with a huge platform can't even do half of what he's doing, there's a problem. It's like you have a bigger platform, you have more resources. You know, if everybody in the community, especially in the Muslim community, if every leader and creative with a huge platform utilize the resources, then that's how we're gonna make change. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how we're gonna progress as a Muslim community, right? But because we're all in this individualistic mindset, we're all trying to secure our own position, but we don't realize the impact of coming together. You know what I mean? And how many more people can you touch? Like when you come together, right? It's just like you know the stories of, like, for example, there's like 5 sheep, and then one separates from the other sheep, and then the wolf attacks that sheep, right?
Yeah.
And then and until the last sheep is by himself, right? It's the same concept. It's like we could out here be by ourselves, but if we come together, like we're gonna be more powerful and more stronger, right? And which is why I'm not just an artist. I'm a community organizer, and I do events, providing platforms for the next generation. You know what I'm saying? And the younger people, because I learned and I realized the importance of creative expression, and I learned that it helped me out in my life. So if I learned that it helped me out, I can't be selfish and just keep this to myself, right? I gotta lay out the blueprint for the rest of the people in the next generation.
Because the thing is, the talent is there. The talent is there in the Muslim community.
Yeah.
Like there's so much talent,
Yeah.
and it's not just about artists, etc. It's about like like creativity means so many different things. It doesn't just mean a poet. It doesn't just mean a nasheed artist, a singer. Like
Yeah,
there's
so
so much.
many different-
There's so many different strands to being a creative, or more than that.
Yeah.
So the thing is, the Muslim community has so much talent, but like you said, if everyone pulled in those resources and everyone came together, and then had like a bigger, like worked for the bigger picture rather than just like the short term gain, which is I can put something out there and I can get some views and I can get some following, but rather there's something more there. Then I think what you're basically saying is, by pooling in those resources, there's a long term legacy impact you're having on like a grassroots level. With a lot of people, you're touching people's lives.
Exactly, and you can't claim like you're doing it for the community. Like I'm providing, like this, like I'm doing this as an alternative. You know what I mean? To whatever is out there.
Yeah.
And I'm doing this to help out the community. This, that. You can't claim that. Like if you're not going to utilize, you know what I'm saying, your resources, for somebody else, and
Sure.
and I feel like a lot of artists out here just just using faith as a marketing tool for themselves, you know. And I feel like it's important. Like if you're gonna, and that's the reason why I don't like with my content. I don't promote my stuff in a certain way, and I don't like. I'm not talking about coming, you know what I'm saying, from misguidance to guidance, right? Because I'm still struggling on a day-to-day basis. I'm just using like my creativity as a uh, outlet of expression,
Yeah.
to give me an understanding of my emotions, and then everybody out there is going to relate to those emotions as well, because everybody experiences similar emotions, you know. And but my life is inspired by faith. That's why I include, you know,
Yeah,
faith
yeah.
in my art when necessary, you know, because it played a huge role in my life. But you know, just being honest and being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And don't create this persona of perfection, which is going to create a disconnect between you and the people, right? That's the reason why a lot of people feel uncomfortable coming into the community, because they feel like there's a standard of what they need to be in order to come into the community, right? So
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I wanted to touch on something a bit different, which is on a more lighter note.
too
More
heavy now,
recently, yeah, it's been a heavy, deep episode, to be honest with you. But it's all good. It's good discussions. One thing I want to speak about is more recently, you went to you went back to Morocco.
yeah,
This was the first time after how long you were going back?
13 years.
13 years, yeah.
Yeah, bro.
Okay.
I was born there too, so.
You were born there, exactly. So
Yeah.
this is the place of your
Shout
birth.
out my Moroccans in London, though. You know what I mean? They disclaim me, bro. Ain't no Moroccan show me love, bro.
Mashallah. Yeah. So obviously you went. This is your place of birth. And alhamdulillah, like I said, you get to travel a lot. But this time you decided to go back to Morocco. So what was that experience like, going back to the place where you were born, seeing the culture there? Because obviously you grew up pretty much in America, so you saw a complete different side of the world. Connecting back with your roots. The only reason why I'm asking this is because nowadays, like this generation, we're not very much connected to our roots at all. So whether you're from Bangladesh, whether you're from Somalia, or whether you're from somewhere in one of the Arab, like, because of growing up in the West especially, you just have no connection to your roots. So what was that experience like for you?
You know, I didn't grow up around Moroccans, one. I grew up around, like, majority East Africans, African Americans, Southeast Asians, like Islanders, like Samoans, you know, Mexicans, and I was literally the only Moroccan in my community, right? So, and growing up in a culture which historically is a culture that strips away from cultures from communities, right? If the majority of my life I was disconnected from my I wasn't proud to be Moroccan. Like I didn't grow up where there's no representation, right? You know, history books, they don't talk about, you know what I'm saying, like the beauty of parts of countries in Africa, right? They you know, it's always degrading, right? There's no representation, even media, right? Like Muslim countries, how they make it seem, right? So you know, it played a part in just me just wanting to disconnect from my identity. I don't want nothing to do with my identity, right? So I assimilated with another culture, you know, because, you know, that's everything that I knew. So before Morocco, I just went a few weeks ago, but before this trip, I was going through so much, man. Like, and was the reason I decided to go to Morocco. I was like, man, I think I need to go to Morocco. I was going through so much, like, mentally, and like the few experiences I was going through in my life that put me in a very dark position. But I went to Morocco. Like, I was literally searching for peace, man. That's what I did, man. I went to Morocco, and like, from the first day I got there, man, I felt this peace in my heart, and then I felt this contentment, man. Like I never felt this before, you know what I'm saying? And it was nostalgic because I used to go there as a kid. But since my grandma passed away and my mom got sick, I stopped going. But I remember, like, for example, I'll be at a cafe, you know, I'm chilling, drinking like a drink or a coffee or whatever, soda. And I would have a conversation with, like, a random elder, you know. I'll just be talking to them, and they'll be like, "What's your family name?" And I'll tell them, and they'll be like, "Oh, your grandfather was my good friend." And just like, that made me, like, feel at home, you know? Like, that's crazy. Like, you need my family? you know. And this is one of many situations where I'll talk to somebody like, oh, like, my uncle passed away like in an accident when he was like 21 or 22. I would talk to someone and they'll be like, oh yeah, I know your uncle, this that. I would go to the area that my family's from, you know, and everybody knew my family, and I felt at home. I felt this sense of community that I never got to experience. But I grew up around I'll be around like my Somali friend in Seattle, right? And then we'll be outside or whatever, and then a random auntie will be talking to him, and they'll be like who's your mom? And he'll say his mom's name, and be like, oh, like you're my distant cousin, or like you're my family, or I knew your mom from back home. I would see that and I'll be like, man, that's so beautiful. I always appreciated that, but I never got to experience that because I was always an outsider, right? But they still, my community still, what I mean, they took me, you feel me, at a young age, right? But going back home to Morocco and feeling this sense of community, walking through the streets and people not like looking at me, right? Like double looking because I look like a local, you know? And until I open my mouth and people are like, where you from? I remember somebody asked, are you from Tunisia? Like, nah, I'm from Morocco, man. I grew up in America. But I felt peace, man. And I even went to, for the first time in my life, I went to the land. I'm from the mountains. I'm from I'm from Wijda, which is like Ayoun specifically, which is the border of Algeria, and I went to the mountains where my grandmother was born and raised until she was like 13 years old.
The mountains,
right? And I asked, yo, where did my grandma live? And they took me to this land of where my grandmother lived, and I saw remnants of a wall from the house that was still there.
Wow.
Right? And subhanAllah, I was just reflecting like imagine if these walls could speak. Imagine what kind of stories would it tell. And I remember I took a rock with me. I took a rock from the wall and I took it home as a souvenir. I brought it to my mom. And I even seen like the kitchen. The kitchen was underground, and I saw the masjid that my great grandfather built.
Wow.
And he used to be a Quran teacher.
MashaAllah.
Right? And I seen his house where he passed away in like the 80s.
Yeah.
And I seen the house that he lived at as well, that he moved to like next to it. And it was still standing, but it was deep, man. Like the mountains that my family's from, there's 1,400 people who live there, and they're all like my distant, family members, right? And I remember when I was there, I was speaking to a person over there, and he was telling me, we were just kind of looking at a tree and reflecting on a tree, and he was like, the reason that we can taste the sweetness of a fruit is because a fruit understands its roots. And he told me, he was like, we are like that fruit. If we don't know our roots, if we don't know where we come from, then we become rotten. That's he was just comparing it to a fruit, right? So like when you have a sense of identity, and you know where you come from, then nobody can manipulate you, and nobody can like put anything in your mind about who you are, right? And nobody could shake you off of your feet. Like when you know like the legacy that Muslims left, right? Introducing to the West like civilization in the time of Andalus, Qurtuba, then no media is going to affect your mind in a negative way and make you not proud of who you are. Like regardless of how they make us seem, we're going to be proud of our identity. I'm a proud Muslim. Like when you know who you are. But if you don't know who you are and you don't know your roots and where you come from, anybody could say something negative about you or your people, and they could shake you, be like, damn, you like I was when I was a kid. I was embarrassed of my identity, right? And just like Morocco, for example, you know what I mean? Just being from that country, and understanding like the role that my ancestors played and the struggle that my people came from and overcame, it made me proud of where I came from, you know what I mean? And I embraced that identity, right? So that's the importance of knowing where you come from, man. Right, so nobody could make you ashamed of where you come from, regardless of how the lies that they want to put out about our people.
See, I never looked at it that way. The way you've broken it down, I've never looked at it that way. Obviously, we get the fact why it's important to have connection to your roots and everything. But the way you kind of broke it down, I think that's very powerful. Because ultimately, by us connecting with our roots, it's not the fact that I'm a proud Moroccan, I'm a proud Bangladeshi, though there's nothing wrong per se with appreciating, where you're from. But then ultimately it comes down to, like, it's because of the struggles of those people.
Yeah.
Like, Islam is still strong.
Yeah.
Because if they could live the way they lived and they got through their experiences and they were still able to be unapologetically
Yeah.
proud Muslims,
Yeah.
then like, and then you compare it to like the kind of struggles we're going through. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
it gives you a lot of strength.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with repping your country. So
Yeah.
that's, I remember one time I asked the sheikh, I was in conversation. I was like, "Where you from?" And he got mad. He was like, he was like, "It doesn't matter where I'm from. We are all Muslim, And I was like, bro, that was a regular question, buddy. You know what I'm saying? and it made me think. It's like, man, like, Islam never came to destroy culture. Islam came and it taught us to take the good and leave the bad. There's good and bad in every culture. You know what I
Very
mean?
true, yeah.
So it was just interesting, man. I remember I was like 21 or something, or 20, but I was shook, bro. I was like, I got kind of scared. I'm like, yo, you made me feel embarrassed to ask you that question to begin with. I was like, whatever. I never talked to him again. But the point is, bro, like even like when it comes to like me rapping. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
people, they're uncomfortable with that idea because they're associated with hip hop culture, and then they associate hip hop culture with black culture, and you know what I'm saying, they have this this negative idea of black folks, right? And they look at the mainstream hip hop and how individuals are portrayed in mainstream hip hop, and then they associate with that and be like, oh, astaghfirullah, this brother's rapping, he's imitating the kuffar. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, bro, like, you know what I'm saying, like Islam never came to destroy cultures. You know what I'm saying? Like, within my Moroccan culture, there's things that's not permissible in my religion. I put that to the side. I take the good and I leave the bad. Just like any other hip hop culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Pakistani culture, whatever country you're from. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just understand and be conscious of what you're allowed to be. Don't be prideful to the part where you're taking every aspect of the culture, but understand that, you know what I mean, there's limits and boundaries. So.
I want one final piece of advice from Essam. Especially just kind of reflecting on everything that you've kind of experienced in your own life, and a message to maybe the younger people who might be experiencing something that you're going through. Either it might be, because we touched on so many different aspects in this show, like it might be they don't have that connection with their parents. They're kind of stuck in a certain lifestyle right now that you were more accustomed to before, during your early years. It might be someone that's also hiding their emotions. Like I know it's a very kind of on the spot, like a very general question, but it's kind of like you giving advice to your younger self.
Okay.
Let's stick to that.
Okay.
What advice would you give?
So, okay.
It's a deep one, bro. We're finishing deep here.
Yeah, so, okay, I'm gonna make sure, you know what I'm saying? Like, if I was speaking to young E, man, Essam, bro. Senor Essam. But, no, I'm joking.
Young
but,
E.
Youngie. I'm just, okay, so if I were to give advice to my younger self, man, you know what I mean? So all right. When you look at like the mainstream industry, for example, right? I'm gonna tell her back to this right here. I like to connect points.
Yeah.
When you look at the mainstream industry, right, like mainstream culture in the West, there's this narrative. I come from poverty, and now I'm success. I'm rich. For example, like Biggie, like birthdays were the worst days. Now we sip champagne when we thirsty. Right? Don't ask me how I know that. You know what I'm saying? But
Basically, it's like the typical like rags
it's
to
the
riches.
idea though. That's the narrative, right? There's
Yeah.
importance of what, you know what I'm saying. I'm saying right here, right? I come from poverty. I come from nothing, and now I'm successful. But what about the struggle that how many people lost their life trying to achieve that American dream? How many people lost their lives on this journey, right? Like, there's so many people that lost their lives trying to get rich or end up doing time in prison for the rest of their lives and losing freedom, whatever the case may be. The same narrative that we create as a Muslim community, because like we grew up in the Western society, and we reflect the same idea. I come from misguidance, and now I'm guided. That's cool. That's good in certain cases, right? It's important to tell these stories of the struggles we overcame, right? That's true. But in certain cases, right, understand, like young Essam, understand that, like, don't let that idea make you scared to cut, like, pretty much to continue to do good. Right, because sometimes like our mind gets stuck on the idea that, okay, this is a narrative, this is a standard that the Muslim community creates, and if I don't live up to that standard, then I'm not good enough to be amongst like this community right here, right? That's the reason why people leave completely. They leave the religion completely is because the way they're treated for who they are. Like we grew up in this society, in this community, right? Like you can't change me overnight. You can't change me by just giving me advice or telling me like, brother, like why is your pants below your ankles when I'm walking into the mosque? Appreciate the fact that I'm coming into the mosque or making or telling somebody they can't wear their hair a certain way because of cultural difference or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? But like pretty much understand that like you don't have to be a perfect individual. Like the essence of our creation is to forget. Like we make mistakes. Like we're gonna slip up regardless of what we do. Even if we change our life around and we're doing something great, we're gonna slip up and we're gonna make mistakes. But don't let that guilt, right, and don't let that idea like stop you from continuing that positive journey that you're on. Because sometimes like we're trying to be on a positive journey, but certain experiences, whether it's like backlash or negative words from other people, whatever the case may be, it's gonna push us away from the community. You know what I mean? But you know, understand that you know what I'm saying, like that's that idea of perfection is dangerous, right? You know how like you were talking about earlier too, like you feel good because you're productive. You know what I'm saying, today, like you did a lot of things, you know, and sometimes even with the like idea of society, if I'm not being productive, you know what I mean, throughout my day, I'm gonna feel guilty, I'm gonna feel sad, I'm gonna get into the state of depression because I'm not meeting the standard of what my day is supposed to look like. Instead, I'm just sleeping all day, laying down. You know what I mean, and it puts you into a state of depression, and it pushes you away from wanting to affiliate with a certain group of people.
So continue the positive journey, and obviously, kind of like part of what you said reminds me of a hadith, which is the famous. Everyone knows it, that every child of Adam is a sinner. And actually, the word khata, which is used in that hadith, it literally means someone that makes a mistake over and over again. But the best one is the best person who makes mistakes. That's basically the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that's like Allah acknowledging that like you're gonna continuously make mistakes, because the word is khata. That means like someone's always, it's not even like khati means like one off. Sometimes you make a mistake. Now this is like continuously, but the best one is the one that turns back.
No, straight up, man.
Exactly, the one who turns back and continues basically going. Because if you feel pushed away, like you said, people, they just go the other way completely.
We got to speak more on the like Allah's mercy is powerful, man. You know what I'm saying? We got to stop scaring people, bro. You know what I mean? Allah, Inna Allah Ghafur Rahim. You know?
Of course.
Indeed, Allah is the most gracious, most merciful.
Definitely.
You know?
Alhamdulillah, man. It's been a pleasure. Essam, it's been a pleasure, man. Like we've had some good discussions, positive discussions. Ilm Feed is all about highlighting positivity.
We feeding Ilm.
We feeding Ilm, exactly.
Yeah.
So now
you better not use this as marketing, bro. Yeah, come on, man. Unless I get incentives, man.
Yeah, I know.
Shout out Ilm Feed, though, man.
Alhamdulillah. Honestly, appreciate your time, bro. Jazakallah khair. And may Allah bless you and your family and all the work that you're doing in the community, and allow you to continue to grow on your journey.
Jazakallah khair, man.
I
appreciate you, my brother. Shout out to Shabir, man. That's my guy, man. Shout out Shabir, man.
Mass 139, bro.
Yeah,
it's been a pleasure, man.
Yeah,
Jazakallah khair, bro. And to everyone that's been watching, it's been honestly, like my personal reflection, it's been one of the most deep, like the deepest kind of episode I've done, but the most like insightful. It's been very different, but it's been a pleasure. Like you know, hearing and seeing the kind of like the story behind the artist, and behind the person that we kind of, you know, just see as like a face on social media or whatever it might be. But this is really interesting. It's important for all of us to kind of understand that everyone has a journey, everyone has a story. But please do, inshallah. Like this is again a brilliant episode. Subscribe to Ilm Feed's YouTube channel, and it was good to kind of hear the story behind the artist, which is Essam. Jazakallah khairan. Make sure you guys subscribe to Ilm Feed's YouTube channel. Check out Brother Essam's work as well. Subscribe to us on iTunes. More podcasts coming your way, inshallah. From your host Shabir. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.